If no one objects, then let's start. My name is Alexander Auzan. I'm the moderator of this session, and I'd like to invite and introduce our today's panelists. Natalya Zubarevich, Russian geographer, economist, one of the best experts in Russian regions. Please, you're welcome. Professor of the Geography Department of the Moscow State University. Mr. Polishchuk, economist, institutional economist specialist. Worked in the Higher School of Economics in Maryland University and lots of others. Nakhapetyan, Managing Director of Sberbank CIB. Ex-Managing Director of Troika Dialogue. Worked in on various positions and interested in various topics. Grigory Revzin, historian, art critic, columnist, journalist. So we expect two more panelists to come, because today in Moscow, very unexpectedly, it is snowing very unexpectedly, and when people are stuck in traffic jams, I just advise that they just walk to the venue. Well, I hope they will come and join us eventually. So how our session will look like? I'll start the session with a couple of points, and afterwards we will have two presentations of our international speakers, experts in various areas, Olga Vasquez-Ruana and David Erixon. I'm going to introduce them in more details when they are coming to present. After the presentations, we will have a short speech, and then we will ask the panelists to discuss some questions regarding human capital and the urban environment and socio-cultural dimension, and all these important and new aspects. We will discuss all of them. So, if I may, just 7 minutes for my presentation, and please show us the slides. Can we have the slides? Yes, please, presentation number 1. Thank you. Dear friends, I'd like to start with the following. The materials I'm going to present were developed by my colleagues from the Moscow State University and the Moscow Project Design University, and colleagues from the Strelka institution. We cooperated with them quite closely during the recent year. But why do we speak about human capital today? It's not the complete list of talents Russia contributed to the whole world in the 20th century. And in red, we can see people who continued their activities and created very interesting products living outside of Russia. And let's compare, according to conservative estimations of Mr. Entov, Mr. Zverikhin's invention can be compared with 20 GDPs of Russia during recent 20 years. Sergey Brin, 5 to 7 GDPs, annual GDPs. And there is an assumption that in the human capital we have far more significant prerequisites to be successful than in, for instance, hydrocarbons we were so actively focusing on during recent years. And these three curves, trajectories, that's the result of calculations that were made by a very prominent British-American statistic, Angus Madison, on the results of long-term development of economies. And we have trajectory A, curve A of successful countries, 175 countries. Trajectory B, less successful and some cases of success on the green curve. We think of ourselves as a point on the A curve, but looking at it more attentively, we can see that we are closer to the B curve, but we have the potential to be closer to the A curve. But what can we do to achieve this successful trajectory? When we looked into the whole thing, and we did it within the framework of a consulting commission under the government of the Russian Federation, we looked at social and cultural factors and behavioral factors that were important for countries that went through a breakthrough, and we compared those with successful countries, and the results were quite close. And these 5 characteristics in changes of behavioral and value dimensions were actual and were relevant everywhere. Rationalism, individualism, long-term orientation, and smaller distance between the authority and the people. Japan, South Korea, Taiwan, Singapore, and others. And this chart shows how Russia can be compared with these value characteristics in terms of behavioral criteria, Hofstede criteria, and value criteria in Gilhard index. And practically, what does it mean? It's not a scientific task to resolve, just to understand how people live and how they implement, develop, and lose these capabilities. I think this results due to the fact that science, according to the Soviet definition, is to meet personal needs on public account. You know, we try to know what are these factors in Russia and Moscow and St. Petersburg and Berlin in Germany, and in the United States, New Jersey and Maryland. And the results of social polls, social analysis, our experts from St. Petersburg conducted showed that part of assumptions important for human capabilities, reflecting and defining economic capabilities. Yes, they are there, but low value of standards and all, they are also there. But what does it mean? You know, these assumptions that I'd like to draw your attention to, because actually what we have, yes, it's understandable that human capital can be capitalized in proper conditions, and there are serious growth factors, and among the characteristics we seek for and which we lack, some people call it a civil culture, some condition of the social atmosphere and the level of trust. And today we speak about cities, the level of trust in this city. We speak today about Moscow mostly. And number 3, we understand that lots of things just cannot be discussed without characteristics regarding linked to long-term orientation. So, basing on these considerations, problems and expectations and challenges, we try to formulate, preparing for this session, we try to formulate 3 groups of questions we would like to address our experts today, our panelists. So let me, after the presentations of our foreign panelists, experts, I'd ask you to show these particular slides, so for our colleagues to know what questions they are asked. So I'd like to wrap up my presentation at this point, my introduction into the session, and now I'd like to ask to come here Olga Vasquez-Ruano. Olga Vasquez-Ruano is an architect and an urbanist She is in charge of projects in various parts of Europe and Asia, and now she is working with Trumpenars Hampton Turner, and she does cultural diagnostics of cities and corporations. Trumpenars Fund and their colleagues, they are one of the most prominent developers of approaches to designing commercial projects, understanding cultural values and all other things I mentioned. Please, you're welcome.
Thank you, Alexander. Can you hear me? Yes? Thank you for your kind invitation. Let me see. Yeah. Very good. Good afternoon. My name is Olga Vasquez-Ruano, as Alexander has mentioned. I'm here representing a Dutch consulting firm, which may not be very well known, Trumpenars Hampton Turner, also known as THT. And yeah, now it works. We are a very small group of very hardworking people based in the Netherlands, and we have also additional offices, small offices as well, in London, Singapore, and Tokyo. And we specialize in the analysis of business culture and business environments. We've heard a lot of, comments about business culture and the business sector and the private sector this morning, so this only seems appropriate. What you're seeing in the slide are our two founders. The consulting is the brainchild of Fons Trumpenars and Charles Hampton Turner. When Fons and Charles met in the late 1970s, they were both studying let me go by my notes, because otherwise I'll go through the 10 minutes rather quick. Each had been developing their own theories in the field of management. Fons had been working on a cultural model based on layers that he was using to predict the success of various management styles in different countries. And Charles had been working on dilemma theory and reconciliation. Well, together they set out to explore a remarkable idea, which was that they wanted to quantitatively measure cultural differences and actually figure out a way to reconcile them. So, in a nutshell, the result of their collaboration became this very simple process that is also called the 4 R's of culture, or corporate culture. It involves 4 steps, the first being recognition, so learn about yourself. The second being respect, learn about others. The third being reconciliation, learn how to work with others. The fourth being realization, implement those lessons and obtain results. And since then, the method has been at work for 27 years now. Let's say the rest is history. Their collaboration resulted in what is now called the Trumpenars Hampton Turner Intercultural Awareness Profiler. And there are a number of web-based applications that have developed from it. I'm showing you just a few examples right now. And these tools, by the way, the awareness profiler is actually what enables that first step that we were discussing, the step of recognition. And since then, THT...
И с этого времени THT фактически принадлежит самая крупная веб-база и по корпоративной культуре и бизнес-вопросам. И также включает в себя ответы от 100 тысяч корпоративных менеджеров и лидеров государства. И хочу сказать, что даже при том, что вот эти ответы классифицируются в отношении национальных культур, они представляют корпоративную культуру также. И с точки зрения корпоративной культуры и этих слоев. Это также стало площадкой для обсуждения кросс-граничных вопросов работы. И вот эти детали я, конечно, не буду обсуждать, но главное здесь, главное в этом бизнесе, у нас есть публикации, самые известные, это то, которые сейчас переводятся, это «По волнам культуры». И вот, собственно, поэтому мы здесь И из этой работы можно такой вывод, что наш опыт говорит о том, что когда бизнес и культура встречаются или скрещиваются, культура всегда побеждает. И вот этот анализ форм культуры действительно применим к национальным и урбанистическим платформам. Прежде всего, давайте ответим на базовый вопрос. А что такое культура вообще? Потому что нужно задуматься, и ведь дефиниция – это то, что не все согласятся с чем. Во-первых, нужно фокусироваться на внешних и ясных символах культуры, те, которые мы можем видеть, однако мы считаем, и я думаю, что все, наверное, согласятся, что все-таки это какой-то внешний слой, и мы видим нормы и ценности, это как раз то, над чем мы ведем исследования. И мы здесь соотносимся к социальным контрактам и эти ценности, которые и чаяния разных слоев. И из этого выходят нормы, которые также становятся частью сознания, и, конечно, они становятся ключевыми, такие базовые предположения или базовые прогнозы культурные. Поэтому я думаю, что вот такой точный пример можно привести. И именно из этого, с этим культурным профилем, понятно, что организован он по 7 параметрам, и здесь вы видите каждого из них, в основном он основан на дилемме или на конфликте. И вы видите вот эти 7 слоев.
Universalism versus particular.
Универсальность или особость. И видим эффективные коммуникации или нейтральные, и, может быть, даже можно обсуждать конкретные примеры в отношении первого из всех. Это универсальность или особенность. И, наверное, взять вот какой-то пример из запросника можно, или тех вопросов, которые мы составляли. Вот, скажем, человек медленно едет на машине, и есть, конечно, какое-то ограничение скорости, и вот вы единственный свидетель того ДТП, в которое он попал. И какие права у вашего друга, то, что вы будете свидетельствовать или лжесвидетельствовать в его пользу в суде? Возможные ответы такие. Например, что, во-первых, у него есть определенное право, какое-то право, или вообще никакого права на это нет. И интересно оказалось то, что разные культурные группы дают совершенно разные ответы. Ну, например, вот на этом слайдере вот есть разделение, на котором видно, что в США очень высокий балл о том, что нет никаких прав. А Южная Корея, и особенно Россия, здесь половина почти населения отвечает, что какое-то право у друга есть. Здесь нет неправильного или правильного ответа. Здесь есть только разница. Это вот то, как мы это измеряли. С одной стороны, у нас универсальность. Универсализм – это, конечно, правила и системы, а с другой стороны, это особенности, которые охватывают отношения и различные исключения, негативный момент. Мы пытаемся увязать особенно позитивные ценности. И, может быть, еще небольшая иллюстрация. Вот, скажем, Российская Федерация. Здесь представлен корпоративный профиль по 7 классификациям. И я могу вам показать, как выглядят здесь Нидерланды. И сравнить, может быть, друг с другом также, где можно будет увидеть по универсальности относительно обособленности. Здесь по-разному баллы распределились. И также, что касается отказа относительно... Вот сейчас я посмотрю, где у меня все это. Относительно особенности, специфичности контекста. И по второму измерению это индивидуальность. Почему это все релевантно для городской среды? Мы считаем, что города для культурного эффекта самые главные части, самые главные элементы. И они очень релевантны для культурного человеческого капитала. Поэтому мы считаем, что очень высокоспециализированные и высокопродуктивные культурные группы. Через нашу модель можно лучше понять культуру этих групп и той группы, которую вы хотите привлечь. И по регионам также можно посмотреть, скажем, какая группа показывает больший рост. Например, недавно мы в Дубае закончили такое исследование. Тут мы конкретно задавали вопрос по оценке успеха и создания вот такой идентичности. И, может быть, какие-то выводы, наверное, надо здесь сделать. Частично мы не только пытались объединить две корпоративные культуры, в основном это по слияниям поглощениям, но также хотели понять расстояние между теперешним статусом организации и идеальным статусом. Поэтому вот этот переходный период, вот теперешнее и идеальное. В заключение надо сказать, наверное, буквально следующее. Может быть, это прозвучит мелко, но тем не менее сегодня мы уже слышали, что мы и считаем также, что человеческий капитал в разных условиях, в городских условиях отвечает за бизнес-культуру, и мы так говорим. Почему? Потому что мы считаем, что слишком много вызовов. Один это тот, который происходит из создания рынка труда, и дальше государство, то есть это предоставление хорошего, качественной среды, городской среды, и также перспектив на будущее. Дальше, что касается, может быть, таких наблюдений, даже не предсказаний, что касается инструментов, мы считаем, что ту работу, которую мы делаем, и все другие импликации, которые относятся к культурному профилю, становятся все более не только интересной, но релевантной, то есть значимой для развития солидной стратегии городской, урбанистической. И такие исследования показывают, что, может быть, вот то, что мы обсуждаем у себя в офисе, буквально несколько дней назад обсуждали, что касается тенденций, мы здесь обслуживаем, так скажем, или обсуждаем вот такие сенсорные или вообще опыт общения с городом. Урбанистический опыт, который мы видим, что все, что приходит, скажем, от ритейла, от магазинов, все это входит и захватывает урбанистическую среду, и мы видим проекты урбанистического дизайна, которые можно назвать женскими или, скажем, которые не являются физическим воплощением каких-то архитектурных решений, а, скажем, вот это различные стимулы типа потрогать, понюхать или попробовать, что касается еды, например. Вот это все очень задействовано в городской среде. Вот, собственно, такие у меня мысли. Большое спасибо за внимание. Если есть вопросы, пожалуйста, задавайте. Спасибо. Спасибо. Спасибо.
Сейчас послушаем.
Please, let's listen to the second presentation, then we will get back to the questions, and we might ask you to make some comments on the discussion that are going to be critical for the panel discussion. Again, thank you very much, Olga.
Trust that it was great words. Thank you.
Позвольте пригласить.
Allow me now to give the floor to David Erixon. David Erixon is the founder of Design, Promotion, and Hyper Island. 3 departments in subsidiaries, Sweden and London, 300 specialists graduating from them every year. David is working in different areas as brand directors. Used to be brand director of Vodafone. He's part of the board of directors of Vodafone currently, and which is quite close to me as a professor. He's part of the Strelka curriculum.
Thank you. I'm here to talk to you potentially about a very, very different angle, although on the same topic. So I'm not an urbanist, I'm not an architect, I'm not a researcher in life values, but what I do was, the reason why I'm here is because I set up a school about 20 years ago in Sweden that is involved in digital technology. And when we started Hyper Island 20 years ago, It's this school here. You know, we set it up in an old prison on an island in the middle of nowhere in Sweden, not even close to Stockholm or Gothenburg or anywhere. But we knew at the time, well, we believed that technology, in particular digital technology, would transform, and it would transform the world. And we were eager to be part of that transformation and that change. And of course, now 20 years later, we've been called all kinds of things, such as, you know, the digital Harvard and the digital Cambridge and Oxford. But what we do is that basically we get 400 people into Hyper Island every year, and we immerse them in digital technology from all kinds of aspects: business aspects, technology aspects, design aspects, media aspects, but also actually research aspects. And we take them through very interdisciplinary and practical thing throughout a period of 2 years. If you're on an undergraduate program, we also run postgraduate programs these days. But what's really interesting about them is that of the about 4,000 people that have been to Hyper at this point and gone through Hyper, so that, you know, the whole alumni, they really work everywhere in the world. In fact, today most of our students is actually not coming from Scandinavia, they're coming from abroad, and they will end up anywhere in the world, really. And what is really, really interesting about what they do, which I think is why I'm here talking to you, is that they end up in businesses and organizations that are truly innovative. You will find our students today working for Googles and the Apples of the world, and you will also see them in many of the innovation companies based in Silicon Valley. We have actually a few here in Moscow that are involved in really, really cool stuff, and yeah, they'll go anywhere. Now, some of you might have seen this particular slide before. It's usually referred to as the law of diffusion, but it's an attempt to try to explain how change and transformation takes place in a wider population. And it's basically, it's a distributed curve on how new behaviors is adopted by a wider population. So on one hand, you have kind of the population, on the other hand, you have time. And what's really interesting about this law of diffusion is it stipulates that there's actually a very small amount of people that will ignite new behavior and change and ultimately innovation. And sometimes they refer to as innovators. Here I refer to them as creators, because I actually think when we're going to talk more about Moscow and the Russia perspective, it is about the people that create new stuff, whether it's in a digital industry or whether it's in any other existing industry, or potentially creating a completely new one. And they're usually only 2.5% of the population. And they are followed by, you know, the early adopters, the people that will jump on things quickly. I call them front runners. These are the people that lap onto things and really drive new behaviors and new trends in society. And I think the reason why I'm here talking to you about Hyper Island, talking about our students, is that in many, many cases in the industry that is called today, you know, broadly digital, they are these creators and they are these front runners. And what is interesting about these people, when you're starting to think about how these people are going to shape societies for the future, is their life values. And I've been able to be one of them and study them for, you know, 20 years now. And what is so interesting about these people is that they really are a manifestation of a generation that is not born out of the industrial age with the values that comes out of the industrial age. It's post-industrial, but I would also say it's part of a new information society. And this is not the only world that we will see in the future. I'm not saying that this is how the world is going to look like. I think that the world is going to be incredibly diverse as we move on. And this will be one kind of world that will be represented in the future. But when you try to cater for these people, you need to realize that they have a different set of life values. We've already had two great introductions around life values, so I don't need to talk more about what the definition is. However, what I want to say is that for a very long time, particularly during the industrial age, we've been kind of stuck with the Maslow model, the hierarchy of needs, and we thought of them as motivational drivers, and we kind of thought of them as this is it, and you move from one to the other, and when you reach self-actualization, you're done. But what I'm noticing, and what I'm here, one of the messages I'm here to give you today, is something over and above the value of self-actualization. What we notice in this generation and with these people, and they are now 20, 25, 30 years old, is that a lot of them have already reached what you would say self-actualization. They're interested in knowledge, they're interested in beauty, they're interested in personal growth and all of that. But they actually move beyond. And it's almost like the life values pyramid is reversing and opening up to a completely new set of life values. I call these life values self-transcendence, because what I notice is that they leave kind of a very egoistic, materialistic view of the world, and they get really excited about new stuff. And the new stuff is, how can we support others? How can we think long term? How can we do stuff together? How can we collaborate? How can we leave something behind us that is a legacy? How can we deal with some of the problems that might not be specific to us, but are important to the rest of the world? So as you start, continue to talk about how Moscow is going to change and how Moscow needs to change to cater for new kinds of life values, what I want to leave you with is, don't miss out these 2.5% that might seem very small and might be on the fringe today, but it's those people with those progressive life values that will make change happen. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Thank you.
Please return the first presentation to the screen, the last slide, with all the questions. Is it possible, or shall I come to do it myself? Well, dear colleagues, let's now, the next phase, let's do it as follows. Together with Natalya Zubarevich, we will allocate 5 minutes to each to speak up, and everybody has the right to speak on whatever. A couple of questions closer to your heart. I do have predictions as to who's going to be interested more in what questions, but they are not exactly right. They might not be right. And after we are through, we will request Andrey Sharonov to speak up, deputy mayor in the government of Moscow, the person with extensive experience working as the first deputy minister of economics and the board of directors member in Troika Dialogue, and so on and so forth. So then I think we will afford a couple of comments after we are through the round. But please stick to the 5 minutes procedure for us to have more opportunities to react to each other's comments. Natalya, the floor is yours. Well, I'll try to be very brief to answer each of the questions. First one, I don't understand how you can view Moscow separately standing. It's wrong, because in principle, you can do nothing, and the human capital, well, the way Moscow has been doing it up until now, because when other regions don't have money or human capital or employment, the machine is operating on its own. But when the global financial crisis is over, what was shown on the slide will continue its massive outflow of Muscovites because there's no institutional space or high-quality urban space, and there's no opportunity to create employment in according to the demand. If we speak about the country in general, you can not doing anything, but you can do all the things. Well, now about strengths. Well, education is quite okay, but 3 students, the majority of them are educated in non-state educational institutions, and I would not evaluate the role of education in Moscow at the present moment.
50% of adult population of Moscow have higher education, and that's the preference which works. I can't see any breakthroughs that could be achieved through the level of education through the educational system we have today. Speaking about trust and friendly environment, these are two interconnected things indeed. Point number one, to have trust and friendly atmosphere set in place, we have to be separated from each other and afterwards again join and be united. Why do we have to separate ourselves from each other? Because the level of trust is so low, it can't be restored on a huge scale. You know, localizing, that's the key word here, the key thing to restore trust. What does it mean? It means that you should do serious municipal projects and allocate more money for such projects. And it also means that you will have to do something different in our schools, not doing what they do today, these fiscal things with our schools, but to create communities of children and parents, and those will be local things that and all other relevant adjacent things that only such structures may restore trust. And websites of houses, of various buildings, you know, private, local, and very localized things. That's what can help us here. And also development. Regarding development, you know, city egotism is there. We know what is called in American urbanistics, not in my backyard, as they put it. You know, you can improve anything you want, but do not touch me. And I know about this egotism of owners of cars. You know, what can we do there? A huge range of steps that are conducted by this by the Moscow government, and the compromises should be there, you know, and alternative offers. Without that, we can't do. And the sensible understanding that the government can push something on us, but to convince people, that's the other story. Thank you very much. Thank you. Leonid Polishchuk. Yes, please, Leonid. You're welcome. Microphone, please. Okay, and during this discussion, a couple of significant words were articulated: development, innovations, human capital, institutions, and culture. And during my 3 minutes, I'd like to put them into order. And today's modern development calls for innovations. Innovations are fed by the human capital and these capabilities of creativeness and talent and the willingness to take risks, and of course adequate amount of knowledge. But you know, human capital is not always transformed into innovations, and areas of implementation of humans' capabilities depend on the quality of institutions very largely depends on it, and the number of potential entrepreneurs in this or that country is more or less stable, but the areas are different, areas where people try to use their capabilities. Stable institutions, supremacy of law, fighting corruption, and stable administration and governance. Those are things that contribute to economic growth. And so these are, there are lots of dilemmas there when you choose where to put your knowledge and talent into. Innovations or something different. In today's Russia and in Moscow, we can see this dilemma very obviously. Talented people in Moscow do not always go into technical areas, and lots of talented young people go to legal and law institutions. And that means that human capital goes not to the areas which formulate and contribute to innovations. Formal institutions, that's the result of the government's activities. And good and bad institutions, this division, this separation is also a separation of the community, of the citizens. And again, and the capability of the society, how to make the government and the state accountable. That's about culture, civic culture, the type of culture where people know their responsibility for what happens not only in their families, but in their cities and in their countries. And the type of culture where people realize and are willing to participate in the policy making, and after people met their basic needs, they earn their living and so on, they start looking at the environment they live in and at how adequate the transport infrastructure is fixed, and the level of healthcare and education, and the adequate activities, of course. And it's something about politicalization of people, and this type of civic culture will bring better municipal governance and better institutions in the future. But I'd like to say that this accumulation of civic culture, which we can witness today, is going simultaneously with another process, understanding of the role of civil society in cities. Two processes here. We can see that people are prepared to act, to participate in political acts, but sometimes they think that the government, the state, cannot meet their obligations, and that's why they should take its responsibilities. We speak about political processes and self-organization at the level of local communities, to supplant the state from this area. And another type of social capital, of course, it makes the whole picture better, but it also may entail negative results, because people tend to neglect the state. And of course, the accountability of local and municipal governments their role is shrinking, and self-organization, political and other ways of self-organization, is a very interesting challenge for all of us. Thank you. Thank you, Leonid Osipovich. Grigory Revzin, please, you're welcome. Well, I'd like to speak from the position of an urbanist, a person looking at these processes from the outside. Previously, the ideas you're speaking about, these ideas, we can see them in the form of various projects, and they change. But speaking about human capital, we had this story about Yapi, that it's a group of people, young professionals, it's an idea from the 80s. The groups of people who travel around the world, and we should give them a certain standard of life, a global standard. And it's a gated community, separate transportation, separate infrastructure, separate public transportation, and so on. And they didn't want local community to interfere into their lives. They thought it would be better to be separated from them. And projects like that were in place in India, China, Singapore, and business school Skolkovo, which was set up. Okay, then you will tell us a couple of words about it, Mr. Nakhapetyan. So it's a classical implementation of this particular strategy, and in this case, that's That's the story, a very understandable story, a high-quality human capital, and cities compete to get it, and we create conditions, they come to us. Afterwards, we witnessed a different story when Richard Florida changed this idea of yuppie and suggested the creative class idea. What is it? He said this yuppie do not live on their own. They want designers, artists, journalists, and so on. And if they live together, then everything will be so creative and so nice, so nicely said. And we said it's a traditional story. We have to have neighborhoods for them to live and cooperate between each other and share knowledge. And it's not a gated community. It's something different. Special city spaces, special institutions, pubs, cinemas, and theaters. But previously, all these things were separated. And it's all about human capital we attract. But recently, recent 20 years. I'm not speaking about the past, but the question is how urbanism, and these are two different approaches. In the first scenario, we just create an ebony tower, but the second scenario is where we create neighborhoods, city neighborhoods, where everyone can contact anyone, and both these things bring up the quality of human capital. But if you want to have this, just to have this capital to come to you or to be created here, how to create this capital, this human capital, and whether the environment can help it, it's a question of the modern urban development. I can't answer this question today. Steve Jobs in his memoirs said that the most creative place of his biography was a coffee vending machine, where everyone met each other and they shared ideas and thoughts and so on. But he started his own business in the garage, and Hewlett-Packard, the same story. So, they tended to start their businesses in garage. And yes, and a vending machine, coffee vending machine. So to create such places doesn't mean that huge investments should be made. But the successes are quite dramatic. But in Japan or France, they tried to create innovative cities. The results were not so impressive, but the investments were huge, and lots of people tried to make up various interesting programs to be implemented there. But as of today, I can say that new things are created in abandoned spaces. Not non-official spaces. Just different spaces, and something is going on there at that places. And in Moscow, we can see where the main sources of such activities are. Boulevards, they do not have special functions to them, and this summer and winter showed us that the boulevards are very significant for people. And also industrial zones and parks and industrial zones, activities started there because those are not busy places. And I think that further development will start in culture centers, in libraries, all these things that we sometimes forget about their existence today, because we do not interfere into their own lives, and that's where the trust can be restored, can be created. And the trust is created in an environment which reflects the main thing, the essence of today's life. Innovative space of the 60s, for instance, when we look at universities or at the cities like Zelenograd or Dubna and their large prospects and large streets. Today, from today's point of view, we think of these spaces as totalitarian spaces. But at that time, it was different, and the perception was different. The main idea today is that we should, share money, ideas, and all. And the main thing today that the space, the city, and the environment should become this place of change, of sharing, sharing things. And the more sharing takes place, the more trust can be achieved. Thank you. Thank you. Nakhapetyan, please, you're welcome. I try to explain why I'm here on this panel. For quite a period of time, I've been doing the following. I try to understand and to create meanings. Managing companies, large and small companies, I dealt with souls, as I put it. I worked with the soul of Troika Dialogue and the soul of the business school Skolkovo, and starting 2013, I'll be working with the soul of Sberbank. I'll try to create it. No, it exists, actually, the soul of Sberbank, but I will be in charge of corporate culture, as they put it. But, I like the term soul. I like it best. When you try to realize that you have 250,000 people, previously in Rosgostrach it was 100,000 people, but anyway, to manage such a large number of different people, which are geographically which are located in various places, and Sberbank bought Turkish Deniz Bank and Austrian Volksbank. Sberbank became an international group now, and the main challenge here is to find meanings and to translate them and to communicate them to each and every employee in this large organization. But when you start analyzing it, if there are any meanings at all, you start thinking about the transportation system, how to translate these meanings to people. Lots of ideas are there, but how to bring it home to people? Sometimes we lack this thing, internal communication. That's what I mean. Not everyone in Sberbank has the access to internet, and there is an illusion that you can get through to them through internet, but it's not possible. You have to think of other means to bring these senses, these meanings to them. Speaking about human capital, we should speak about philosophical meanings. We have to have a transport for such things, and in Moscow lacks this transport, this means of getting through to these people. We have television and the media, newspapers, and maybe the best channel of communication is the subway, which isn't used adequately today. But we cannot put through this idea so far.
To make this city the best in the world. Now about what we are discussing, because I listened to you attentively, and every time you said that citizens are in charge of culture, and when we say citizens, we are sort of forgetting such a word as elite. Because it seems to me that at all times, elite was the one that was setting up the census, the culture, and said this is good and this is bad, behaviorally. And it seems to me that currently there's the crisis of elites. Why so? Because the biggest part of the elite works here and lives in London. Children are educated in China and Singapore. So elite itself does not believe in the space. mobilization of elites and the creation of this type of dialogue with the authorities to find, to love those things and to cascade it down is one of the basics. At one of the round tables devoted to Moscow, well, I was asked, you are saying such interesting things, and what can I do to develop the human capital, trust and confidence? Very simple. I was born in Yerevan, Armenia, and a culture of small city is closer to me, and I say hello to every tenant in my house. When I came to Moscow, I don't know the neighbors next door, and for years we can live next door and just don't know each other and not say hello. It's a normal psychological thing you can solve, as well as the psychologists did solve the elevators breaking when there was a piece of advice given to put a mirror there, and those things stopped. And when I came to Sberbank, when you come to elevator, everybody says hello, irrespective of whether you know the person or not. Right away, you start smiling, your mood is better. And if we speak about confidence or trust, it also improves, and you can do it. You can experiment in your house. Yesterday, I watched a program on TV, and some tricks, and a girl, the lady was throwing a flour and the dough to the face of people, and I looked at them and realized that the reaction of people was fantastic. They smiled and they even laughed. Just imagine that this piece of dough somewhere in Ashan will be thrown to your face. What's the reaction, do you think, would be? And when I speak about the soul of an organization or a big corporation or a company and the soul of a city, I mean to say that there are many things that can be translated, and there are big industries in this city which are underdeveloped, like charity. We should be professional about, such as, and I can say someone who representing art quarter or art neighborhood, he said, Picasso, what he did during his life, if you counted in money, he did more than your Gazprom totally did. And we thus realized that the elite that can create an interest to the city and as a vacuum cleaner attract other people here to live here where the elite lives. So I think it's an interesting dialogue between the state and the elite that should be set up, or with the people that review themselves as elite. And maybe we should spend our life to do it. Thank you. Colleagues, before giving the floor to Mr. Sharonov, let's first understand what happened by the moment. The Russian intellectuals, they have two voices. They package for the public a beautiful speech and hinting to the authorities, I would advise you to do this or that. Just look, sorry, colleagues, if it sounds provocative. Well, I just, to make Andrey Sharonov's life easier, for him to see this conversation, Natalya just said that the crossroad is very simple. You can just sit idle and everything will be okay. Or you just should do everything, but it's not related to the Moscow government. But in your position, I would maybe deal with the population and the residents, and maybe we should offer something to the residents. Leonid Polishchuk said that, by the way, it's a very serious thing because the population already knows what to do. They are squeezing you out, either politically or non-politically, starting to do without you, and thus solves their own issues in non-state spheres. And it makes your life easier because they don't charge for that and they don't ask anything. Grigory Revzin said, well, we can sit idle because the life might incept somewhere on its own, but as soon as there's life somewhere, you will go there. For instance, boulevards, the authorities would rush in, and for instance, industrial zones to transform them into houses of culture. And Gore said, forget it about all those residents. Residents don't decide anything. The elite does, mostly in London. Go to London and let's discuss the problems of Moscow. So, Andrey, what are your observations based on the Moscow authorities' advice? Just by accident, last week I was in London, so I already followed the advice. Yes, we there studied the transport and international financial center activities. You know what? Right away, I would make an attempt to treat what was said. Well, because we discussed it, been discussing it for a long time, it's difficult to say something new about it. And I think that we'd rather say something what the authorities think about that and the way they view themselves. Though I wouldn't take the courage to represent the whole authorities, but since I'm in charge of a certain circle of authorities and I can articulate my own values and action plan that we have. First, what Natalya said, that we might sit idle. It seems to me that the phrase that Vladimir Mao mentioned, that Moscow is a transit point between Siberia and London, well, it's sort of justifiable. It's a scenario for doing nothing. And as soon as someone who also was mentioned, we create elite or we drag them in. I think we are now in the status when we have to create them and have to drag them in. Singapore started with just dragging them in. They did everything beautiful and dragged them in. And now they're starting to create them. We are still in the situation when we can create elites and drag them in, and most important is to retain them, the first and second, those created and dragged in. If you sit idle, then it's a matter of time when people overgrow a certain level and mentally and competence-wise, they become citizens of the world, and they are capable of selecting from the whole menu with all nuances and peculiarities. So to sit idle is not an option for us. In this respect, I would like to say that we here follow this a common thought, convenient city comfortable for life, and in the context of our round table, the city comfortable for the creative class. What can the government do for that? First of all, we should have the sanitary minimum, without which we even shouldn't talk. It's education, healthcare, transport, environment. I don't think that anyone would come to the city because the transport is very good or healthcare is just good. You don't come there to live, not just to come to spend a week for treatment. But if the ecology is bad, transport is bad, and medical healthcare bad, so we have to understand that those are necessary but not sufficient conditions, and the city should do it all. Well, and it did. And you will see the transport, the priorities now. Transport is a conscientious attempt, honestly confirming that it's not even the transport, because it cannot satisfy those with personal cars. Is something we will not ever do. But the second condition is opportunities for the intellectual elite and those whom we would like to educate and grow as innovative elite, cultural elite, intellectual elite. So those are opportunities to work, innovate, and I would like to show you the steps. Maybe they are too fragmentary, but still I think that they belong to the sphere of the attempt to create the sufficient conditions for it to be exciting to live and work here. First of all, I think that it's education. Despite all the criticism that we heard in the morning and from Natalya, we can agree that still there are some educational institutions, and we have some new even. I would speak about Strelka now, because I do really believe that, well, I'm curious to go there, to visit them, just as a personality, curious to come there to talk to people, to learn from the people, and I can see that they're creating values, and that's the pure creativity. And the classical universities and educational institutions we have, I also can see that they do have such opportunities there. Indeed, yes, I understood you, Alexander. I should start not with the Strelka. Well, I like Strelka also very much, but yes, it was the Moscow Emperor's University. Well, second, I would draw your attention to the specialized infrastructure. Of course, it's at the top of the town already, but still it's working, and I can see that for people it makes sense. A special economic zone, business incubators, technoparks, technopolises. And I can see that with all other conditions, when there is an opportunity, it becomes a serious magnet for people who work in Moscow, who come to Moscow from Russia, and those who work abroad, looking around for opportunities for them to come back to Russia, not losing anything professionally. And in this respect, I think we are doing the right thing, maybe slowly, so, but still we are moving ahead. It's the part of urban space that provokes the creation of a creative class. Grigory said that we have houses of culture, libraries, and we have parks. But we are trying to treat it in a new way, all those institutions and elements of urban space. And in my perspective, it does work, because it's interesting. It's an attempt to reflect what a library is. It's not just a storage of books. It's a place for intellectual communication with the access to information, printed, electronic, otherwise. What's a house of culture? It's an attempt to fill the space with creative people. And as Gore put it, or Alexander did, a smaller and give them more freedom for the creativity to flourish. A very good word. Rush to flourish. And the last and not least is the level of trust. When there's no trust, even very good ecology, good transport, and special economic zones would not help much. From some point, people just don't want to tolerate it, and it's a fundamental thing. It's not an urban, it's a national thing, but the city can contribute, and I think that some steps in this area are being made. The system of open government, for instance, when online you can see daily budget implementation, and you can see reports how this yard is renovated, and you can look out the window to see that it's not true. The money was spent, but not for this yard. And it's a curious piece of information. It's difficult, but it is transformed into the system of actions like punishments and all. That's why trust and confidence and the technologies may be very simple, but they should exist as an element of the space for innovators. And another element is the local self-management. It's not our tradition, especially not Moscow tradition, but it seems to me that gradually it comes down to us that to manage such a city not based on local communities, well, at least it is too difficult, and maximum we just would not obtain the creativity on the one hand and detailed perception or a picture of the situation, and from the point of view of possibilities to impact and disclose what we have. So we are deprived of this opportunity. Another thing is motivating local communities and imposing real authorities on them with real resources. Thank you. Thank you. Colleagues, my proposal, we are ready just to give a minute for the panelists to react to the opinions of others. Just 1 minute to go. 60 seconds. Natalya? I have one main comment to make. I always thought that I'm not politically correct, but the Sberbank colleague turned out to be the least political correct. With this kind of elite, nothing would happen. Let's first talk about our elite, and then let's set up our action plans. Thank you. Well, you will have your time to react. Well, it was not meant for Andrey Sharonov. Well, I think that we should explain, speaking about elite. We should clarify what's meant by elite. For me, elite is the city or urban creative class recognizing their rights and capabilities, and I think that the future is with them. Grigory? You know what? Yuri Lushkov just wanted it all. He wanted us the city and to be ancient Russian and to go to space and the Cathedral of Christ the Savior. Well, I think we should decide whether we develop the space or whether we grow the creative class. We cannot do both right away because Singapore, indeed, first they brought everything into one place, created the conditions, and now they can create the elite better than anyone else does. But Singapore, as a state, it just squeezes out juices of all Asia and then place them to London, and they are flourishing on that. We can do the same. It's sort of not exactly, maybe it's bad and nasty, but it's not bad. Gore, welcome. Well, I would agree that the consistency, when we say A, we have to go the way, because on the one hand we privatize, but on the other we nationalize. So let's decide which way we go. As for my opponents and about what I said, well, elite, I think, is the people that take the responsibility for something. And I didn't hear this in your statements. And I can see how many people I know in the audience who do take the responsibility and do and implement projects and not just sit in London. And my speech was about a dialogue that we need to have between the state and the elites. Well, the people I think elite. It's not those people who just sit and criticize everything. And what I heard, sorry, from the right, is a certain criticism that there's no elite. There is an elite. It does exist. And many people present here, even Vasily Tsereteli with his modern art museum, he belongs to the elite. Well, what I meant to say, political elite of the country and nothing else. Well, I do not separate the elite into art, political, or other elite. I split people into the elite that take the responsibility for the city or for the country. Those are the people who say, I'm here, guys. I'm ready to spend my time and my emotions and my soul to invest it in the city because I love the city. That's the elite for me. Thank you. Thank you. Olga and David.
Olga, what about you? Olga, maybe that one, another one.
Is this working now?
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe I just have two things that came into my mind, especially after this last contributions. Maybe unrelated, but I'll just throw them in. Well, the first one is that I'm fascinated by the way in which Moscow somehow becomes personalized with people, with elites, and with the power that is associated with people. I think it's it's a very interesting phenomenon, and I wonder to what extent that could be capitalized on, or actually is something to attempt to undo or unleash or separate. Yes, that's something that and another one is I'm also fascinated by the way in which the discussion seems to be very polarized between great aspirations to promote and achieve, unparalleled quality and achievements, and on the other hand, a conversation that is extremely tough about fulfilling the most basic necessities of the city. And I do wonder how these two can resolve themselves. And I do believe that there are some examples of cities that have excelled in one ways and not in others that may be also fruitful. Maybe London comes to mind in the ways in which it is probably the most dynamic city in terms of the creative class flourishing today. However, it has one of the most atrocious housing stocks and provision of affordable housing. So that doesn't seem to be a problem for the creative class. But anyhow, some thoughts. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Спасибо, Ольга. Спасибо.
Thank you, Olga. David, you're welcome.
I only have one short comment, and I tried to preempt it in my little quick speech earlier, but it's the notion that innovation is somehow only related to what's going on in technology. That's why I talked about creators rather than innovators, because I think that Moscow in particular, Russia in general, you can see innovation of all areas. There are social innovation, there are innovation going on in business, there are innovation going on in technology. And my point is that when we are so focused on the life values of the majority, we forget what's going on in the fringe. And if you really want to understand who is going to drive the change and drive the future, you actually need to look to the people that are spearheading and doing stuff that is today considered to be niche, but it's the life values of those that are going to change the values of others tomorrow. So that was my point.
Спасибо. Thank you.
Andrey, please, you're welcome. Just a couple of words about this argument about elite. We, sometimes confuse elite and bohème, and it's just the thing of terms and responsibilities. I forgot to say about the contribution of authorities into stimulation of innovations and creation and freedom. It's actually fair competition that lies behind it. Some things do not work out because we do not create the conditions for fair competition, where not those who are the best win, but those who belong to us, someone who is closer to us. We are captives of this system where talented people cannot go forward and go through. When there are no equal opportunities in economy, in business, in art, that's the way where talented, creative people are squeezed out from the process. Those who want to be in this process of creation and without intriguing and some other steps that are needed to get somewhere. But the thing is that a fair competition and competitive environment everywhere, in business, in achieving, in accessing state resources and all, and we have to decline these strange forms of support that favors not the best but people who are close to yourself. Thank you very much. Colleagues, I'm not going to tell you who says right things, who says wrong things. We had a discussion, and you'll think to yourself what was important in it for you. But two main points here. 3 years ago, social three days ago, Mr. Van Garst published a book where he stipulated three main points where the society can be successful. First, when elites do and adopt laws that they are going to obey. And when companies, commercial and political organizations, when they start to outlive their founders, and when the law enforcement structure is something that mutually controls that the rights are met and are supported and protected, and how countries achieve these things. It's not clear. Everyone has their own ways to achieve things, but dominating groups, who is the most active part there? Who is going to contact with the authorities, and will they be listening to what they say? Just one comment here. These values are also the result of various processes through education and cultural policy. Our elite has this short-term perspective, and we want to have a lead who look into the future with long-term horizons in their minds. I want these elites not to be intimidated by the future, but today's elites are, and for them to look into the future, long-term orientation. I mean, I do not know what we will have. We'll live and see. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, our panelists. Thank you.